I've just had to turn my music off, but I was really enjoying that and getting into it. It was a proper chilled out soundtrack. Let me know in the comments what you like listening to when you're in your sewing studio. Hello my friends, how are we doing? You join me for another weekly live workshop here on Instagram. We kicked things off last week. It was so much fun to get back into it. We did 3 common fitting mistakes, but your girl threw in a cheeky 4th one. All of these are then uploaded to YouTube, so if you are watching this on YouTube, you can go back through my content and have a little look at that video as well. But my friends, we are currently playing around with timing. Now, some of you said that you wanted Tuesday at 10 AM and others voted for Monday at 4, which of course is today. So I'm gonna play it by ear, see how this goes, see what the general reaction is. If you are joining me live, say a big hello in the comments. If you're watching this on replay on YouTube, say a big hello in the comments. I just love chatting to everybody. So today then is actually really exciting because in the DPL Atelier we have just entered month 2 of our Create, Cut, Construct framework, which means that we are entering pattern cutting month. We have just designed month 1, fashion, create. We have just designed our sundress ideas, and then month 2, cut, we are going to start drafting them, and then month 3, construct, we bring it to life at the sewing machine. So in the nature of pattern cutting, I've got a really amazing quick hack to share with you today about taking patterns down from existing garments. Now, you might have something in your wardrobe that you really like, a favorite top with a nice little sleeve detail, whatever it is. This technique today, there are pros and cons to it, and I'll go into that in a minute, but this technique today is a really, really good technique in order to take down a 3-dimensional garment into a 2-dimensional, that's 4, 2-dimensional pattern in a simple way that doesn't actually involve having to unpick and lay this flat. Now, this isn't going to be 1,000,000,000% accurate, as you'll see in a minute, but it's a great way to get started. And again, my friends, I put a poll on my story yesterday that's, I feel like I pronounced that weird, poll. I put a poll on my story yesterday asking you what you would like to see, either tips to get into fashion design, tips to get into pattern cutting, or tips to get into garment construction, and the general consensus was voting for B, tips to get into pattern cutting. I'm going to be turning this into a series and covering all 3 anyway, so I might do that over the next 3 weeks, but today I just thought I'd give you a really quick tip that is easy, it's beginner friendly, and it's going to help you take down your favourite garments into patterns. What you're going to need to get started is a pen. Now, don't panic. This is a permanent marker, but we are going to take extra care not to damage our garment that we love, that we like. It might be a favourite in our wardrobe and we're just trying to copy the pattern. So I'm armed with a permanent marker. It does need to be a permanent marker, I'm afraid, or something that can draw onto plastic. So these are just sandwich bags, but you can use cling film. Just be careful with plastic. If you pull it hard enough, this will warp out of shape. So what we're going to be doing today is a quick method, and once you've traced it, we're going to be then copying it down onto paper. But you want to equip yourself with a little bit of plastic. I know this isn't the most sustainable approach. I understand that, my friends. So any kind of, the thing with paper is it doesn't have the flexibility that we're after with this. But again, if we're copying this down and we're making garments that we love that will last, then there's obviously sustainable elements to be had there. And I'm always open to ideas if anybody has them. I've got a pair of scissors. I've got pins. I've got my favourite garment here, and I've just got some pattern paper underneath it just to kind of protect my table from using a permanent marker. So I want to take down, just for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to be taking down this section of the sleeve. Now, of course, what you can do with a tracing wheel is you can trace around this, push through the seam here with a tracing wheel. Give me 2 seconds, let me grab one. Here's one I made earlier. I didn't make this, I don't know why I said that. Feel like a Blue Peter presenter. So with a tracing wheel, what you can do, of course, as we know, there is another video I have done about taking down patterns from your favourite garments. Again, you'll be able to find that on my YouTube channel. Just search Digital Pattern Library, or sign up to my newsletter, because every single week I send out a free workshop, and so if you're in the loop, it will suddenly come to your inbox sooner or later. Anyway, what I've taught before is tracing down a pattern using a tracing wheel like this. Now, it's possible to do, but there are pros and cons to doing that, especially if this is just a cotton flannel. But what if you were working with something like silk? What could happen, essentially, is you could end up damaging that fabric, and the whole point of this exercise is we're trying to copy down a garment that we love and a garment that we want to replicate without damaging the garment. So, I'm just going to show you a different technique today. Equip yourself then with your plastic, whether that is cling film, whether that is a standard sandwich bag. Everybody should really have this in their household items. I'm just going to cut this with scissors so that it lies flat, okay? And I want this piece of plastic to be as flat as possible. So I'm going to cut down one edge here. Doesn't have to be straight. You just want a flat piece of plastic, basically. This technique was taught to me when I worked in the industry in London, when I worked for a streetwear brand, and I just thought it was like so simple. It was like a stroke of genius, and we used to use, rather than sandwich bags, we used to use all the packaging plastic that was in the studio. So we always had something to hand, and you just want to cut this and lay it as flat as possible. My essential, what are they called? Essential tremors. My shaky hands are probably going to play up now because I haven't had lunch yet. Ooh! Who knew that would have been the trickiest part? Trying to lay the plastic flat. But here we have it, okay? We've got a long sheet of plastic there. I can see some of you have joined me, so hello, hello. And then what I'm going to do with my pins, and again, this isn't, this might blunt your pins, but swap your pins over. You should be doing that from time to time at intervals anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and lay my sleeve as flat as possible. For anyone who's just joined me halfway through, I'm showing you a technique of taking a pattern down from one of your favourite garments without damaging the garment, and it helps you take three-dimensional shapes in a really simple, easy way. So I'm going to start, if you want to equip yourself with an iron, obviously don't iron the plastic, and just iron your garment flat. That is going to be a really useful thing to do as well. So you want this to be as flat as possible, and then you're going to get your plastic and you're going to pin over. So your plastic needs to be larger than the surface area that you are working with. It needs to kind of overlap it all, and you want to start pinning this plastic on. And I'm going to pin, rather than on the seam line, I'm just going to pin a little bit over it, okay? So I'm going to give myself a little bit of wiggle room here. And I'm going to pin a little, couple centimetres or 15 millimetres away from the seam itself. And just keep smoothing that with your fingers, allowing it to lie quite organically and quite flat. Pin that in. Like so. And then pin that by there as well. And then I'm going to flip the garment over. Oh, this is actually quite a big dress. Flip that over, make sure that this is lying flat, and then just pin it to the other side as well. Now under here, there is a seam line there for the underarm. So I'm just going to make sure that everything is nice and flat. I'm going to fold my plastic over, and I'm just going to butt the plastic along this edge here. So I'm going to make it, this is why it's important to have a really flexible material. I'm just going to make this, wrap around it as much as possible, and then again I'm going to pop in a couple pins, go up to this edge here. That's a bent pin. Top tip for if you're chucking your pins out, I use an old coffee tin, And so whenever I snap a needle or I have a blunt pin that I no longer need, I put them all into this coffee tin, and then I put the lid on and I sellotape it just so that you're not kind of giving your bin men a shock. So let's just lie this flat. Pin around the sides. There's a bit of resistance just because I am working with plastic. Just make sure it's all flat. And just follow it as much as possible. You obviously want to take your time with it. I'm just conscious that I'm taking up your time on a Monday afternoon. So I'm just trying to do it quickly. But obviously take your time with it. Let's just pin that in there like so. Okay, so now that I'm kind of happy with it, making sure that it's all flat and it's all kind of not too creased, if I just fix this shoulder seam here. What I can now start to do with my pen, my permanent marker pen, is I'm going to draw around the seam lines, okay? So I'm going to draw, and just be careful not to mark your fabric, although that shouldn't be an issue if you have used a piece of plastic that is long enough and large enough to cover your surface area. And I'm just going to completely draw around the seam lines. So if we flatten that out, draw around the seam lines. There's a seam that runs down here. I'm going to draw there. It's going to be rough, okay? I told you this at the start of this video. This isn't a 1000% accurate way of doing things, but obviously, I'm going to sound like a broken record, you've got to be sampling your work, guys. So you have to make sure that once you take this down to pattern, you obviously sample it up. I'm just going to draw around the armhole here. Just follow that seam. Follow that car. I have no idea why that just popped into my head. Haven't you always wanted to say that? Get into a taxi and be like, follow that car. And then I'm just going to draw down the edge here. And then if we unpin all of this, this is where the magic happens. And to cross-reference and to just make sure that you've done the right thing, don't forget you can equip yourself with a tape measure, and you can just keep cross-referencing back and forth between the garment and between what you've done here. But I'm just going to unpin all this. I'm going to remove my garment. And there we have it. We've got our sleeve shape that is now on plastic. So we have taken something that is wrapped around an armhole that is a two-dimensional shape that can be quite fiddly for us to try and trace down onto a pattern piece. But with a little bit of plastic that is flexible and malleable, you can absolutely trace around. Now this line here was my underarm, was my seam going under the sleeve. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut through this and just rip that off up there, because this was actually extended over here. And so what you want to do is you just want to line that up and stick that on, and you'll be drawing this line. Does that make sense? So what we saw was the seam allowance on the base of the sleeve, on the underarm. It was tucked round a little bit. It wasn't like perfectly, see that there? This seam here wasn't perfectly on the edge. It was kind of a little bit overlapped. And so that is why when we were tracing it, that is why there's a line by there. So what you want to do is you just want to snip that off and put that over here. Now, do not forget, and then we'd be tracing that, abolish this line here, and we'd be tracing around there. Do not forget, this does not include seam allowance, okay? So you just want to double check with that as well. But what an amazing way to take down a sleeve. Perhaps the seam allowance on this is only 1 centimetre, because we're going to do an open seam. We're going to finish it with an overlock stitch, although I don't condone that. Reasons on that you will find in my other content, and especially if you sign up to the newsletter, all of this is explained. But what we can now do is replicate this garment, but maybe you want to add 15 millimeters for a seam allowance and you want to do a French seam in a different textile. So I really hope that this has helped you. Another thing you'll do, which some of you might be screaming at the screen because I didn't, is you'll want to notch your shoulder seam. But it really is a straightforward, easy, beginner-friendly way for you to just start copying down patterns. So make sure that you're just cross-referencing. You want to measure this distance with a tape measure, measure down there, and then also cross-reference and measure it onto your garment. Another reason, as I say, that I put this paper down, permanent marker, just make sure that you are not getting that on the garment itself as well. But I really hope that you found this useful. Give it a go. It's really useful for trouser legs. Any pattern piece that's a little bit more three-dimensional, tracing a t-shirt, easy, fine. Nice flat garment, we can do it. But if something is more dimensional, if it has folds and pleats, then doing this technique where you can wrap malleable, you know, what's the other word I just used? Malleable, I have no idea, like foldable? I have no idea, that just escaped me. But where you can wrap flexible, plastic around it is really going to give you more accurate results than potentially just going around with a tracing wheel. But of course, my friends, as I always say and make sure, you have to sample this. So don't forget to add your seam allowance, play around with different garment types, and let me know how you get on. As I say, we are entering month 2 in the DPL Atelier, where we are doing these techniques and so many more. It is beginner friendly, intermediate friendly, advanced friendly. I teach you every single thing I know after working in the fashion industry for over a decade. I teach you all the skills across fashion design, pattern cutting and garment construction in an easy to follow manner. At the moment, we are enjoying a 3-month framework cycle where my members and I are designing a sundress. We're bringing it to life through a variety of pattern cutting techniques. And then month 3, which is going to be next month, which is June, it's construct month, meaning that we sew it. You do not have to follow the framework in order to benefit from the membership, but all the learning resources are there for your learning pleasure and leisure. So if you enjoyed this, why not head on over, see what's on offer, have a look at all the features. There are so many features. Also, today is May 2nd, is it not? But it's the start of Me Made May. That's fun to say. And I am a nightmare. I had a creative co-working session with my members the other day. We meet up every single month and we have a virtual get-together where we make a dent in those creative to-do piles. And I turned up and they all scolded me because I sat down for the 90 minutes and I said, I'm going to do admin today. And they said, what are you playing at, Alex? You have got to start sewing. Selfish sewing. That is what creative co-working is for. It keeps you accountable. We have a chin wag, and they really kicked me into gear. And so for Me Made May, instead of me wearing something I've made every day, I think I'm just going to carve out 10 minutes of my time a day. If that, it's got to be achievable, otherwise I won't stick to it, my friends, to do some selfish sewing. And that is why the DPL Atelier is so great, because you've got that community, you've got that accountability, you've got that safe online space to take some time out for yourself and invest in your hobbies. So yeah, if that all sounds great to you, my friends, come over and join us. Let me know how you get on with this technique, if you're even going to use it. Again, I'm just really passionate about showing you a range of ways that you can create your dream wardrobe. One might suit you over another, but it is all about your unique creative journey. So thank you, my friends. Thank you for joining me on this Monday afternoon. Let me know in terms of timing. Next week, we're going to alternate it again. Join me live on Instagram, 10 a.m. on Tuesday, okay? So, my friends, I'll see you then, and I will catch you on the flip side. Have a good one.